Ciao and good morning. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin with Dan and Sean. Post St. Patrick's Day hangovers abound, both literal and figurative. We're delighted to have you here as we start the day the way the pros do, running through today's news. We'll analyze it and then we'll ask for your input. Already see some hands up. It's only Tuesday and the number of new people on our platform is staggeringly delightful. So please raise your hand. I promise I'm clean and sober today. Unlikely to yell at anybody, interrupt them, tell them they don't get the platform. I'll just take it all in and enjoy the presumption of grace for all and the peace, love, and understanding. Dan, Sean, welcome. I'm going to jump right into the daybook schedule. The President of the United States has no public events until 3:30, at least at this point, when he's signing executive orders. Currently closed press, but we all assume that will go wide open. There's no White House briefing scheduled. The president is, however, supposed to call Putin at some point today, and there's lots of speculation about how robust the readout of that will be. In addition, the at some point today, the JFK files will be released. Either there'll be tons of stuff in there that's new and compelling and exciting, raising the question of how could it have been covered up for so long, or there'll be nothing in it, raising the question of why didn't they release it earlier? So we'll see.
I think this is horrible. From what I have been told,
Yeah,
more by
Capone's
experts, not by
Capone's Capone's vault.
this is more government stuff than grassy knoll stuff, meaning it's
Yeah,
all about they're monitoring him, all that
yeah,
crap. And I think we're
yeah.
gonna be if you're what's the guy's name? The producer,
Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone, you're gonna be bummed.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see when it
This
comes
is
out. I'm not.
Geraldo Part Two.
Yes, Capone's vault. Don't know what the vice president's doing. Congress still out till next week. The Democratic leader, Mr. Jeffries, the first time since he met with Chuck Schumer on Sunday in Brooklyn, USA, is having a press availability in Brooklyn, where he's going to want to talk about Medicaid cuts. But you, with Representative Yvette Clarke, but you can bet that on this National Medicaid Day of Action, many of the New York press corps will want to ask about Chuck Schumer. House Democrats are holding a virtual caucus today to talk about Medicare, but I suspect also, or Medicaid rather, but I suspect also they'll talk about the future of the party, which we will talk about in today's episode.
Is this like infrastructure week?
It is. It's
By
talk
the way,
about
two interesting things. I'm going to put a pin in. I will save my Chuck Schumer comments and the juxtaposition to Hakeem doing a presser when Chuck's not for the Chuck Schumer portion of the program. That being said, I will say, if you noticed online, there is several comments or clips about Joe Biden and Barack Obama finding savings in Medicare floating around in the last 24 hours.
Medicare, Medicaid,
Medicaid.
Medicaid. Yeah. In addition, Governor Pritzker, someone discussed by people who I don't believe know what they're talking about, as a potential presidential candidate, is in Washington today doing an event with the Center for American Progress, which is helmed once again by Neera Tanden. They say there are no second acts in American politics. They say you can't go home again. Neera Tanden proving them wrong again, back in the saddle at what was once one of Washington's premier groups on the left in finding a way to leverage policy into political wins. All right, speaking of leverage, Trump-Putin phone call today. Most of the foreign policy sharpies, the smart Alex, say Putin is playing Trump. He's got no intention of agreeing to a deal, and he's just going to string this out. So, Sean, I start with you. I have long believed that the great challenge of all of our presidents in the last five is how do you get leverage over China and Russia. President Trump has talked about potential sanctions against Putin. What arrows are in his leverage quiver over Putin as he engages him today and tries to land this peace plane?
Well, I think both economically and military, it's a very different situation than China. That being said, for those two reasons, I do think he's got a lot more leverage on Putin. He can say, if you actually cross one of these lines that we establish, I will come after you. I will target you, both economically and militarily. And it's a very different situation than if that were China. So I have a feeling that
just to be clear, sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean that it was exactly the same. In fact,
no,
I
no,
agree
I know. No, they both Correct. I
But
get
the goal is the same. The goal is the same. They need leverage.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just saying, I want to be clear because I agree. I mean, they're not the same, but I think they're both the outliers. And I think the difference between this one is that there's a lot more leverage. Sanctions have a lot easier effect on Russia and their country. And then secondly, I think militarily we're in a much, much stronger position to enact change. And I think that Putin does quasi fear the hell out of Trump. Like, what's he going to do to me? Putin's strength remains largely because the people believe that he is this, strong leader. And I think if he were to get attacked in a public way, it would really undermine that. So Trump has that card to play.
Dan.
Well, I think the complete opposite. I think Trump has zero leverage over Putin because Trump's not his banker, either militarily or economically. It's China. And China is very happy to feed Putin and have us kind of play this game with him. And so I think Putin has the leverage on Trump because Trump wants a deal. He badly wants a deal. He is telling the whole world he wants a deal. So he browbeat Zelensky into kind of agreeing to a ceasefire and kind of agreeing to basically what Trump wants. And what do we hear from Putin? Like this morning, Russia leaks that they want all arms to be halted. Then Russia leaks that they would actually like a little bit more land than they currently have. And so Putin is just masterfully saying, all right, I'll inch a little closer to dancing, but here's the condition for it. Now I'll inch a little bit. And Trump's like, I want a deal. I want a deal. I want a deal. Sean, I think Trump is terrified of going to war with Putin. The only leverage we really have is putting arms on the ground. And we keep saying we don't want to do that.
Dan,
so
I
I
agree
think Putin will play him like a harp.
I agree with you almost entirely with one thing that I don't know enough about to say, which is sanctions. The Trump administration is positing that there are more sanctions that could be put on. I don't understand why the Biden folks wouldn't have put on every sanction possible, but apparently they didn't. But there's this factual question, which is if you take the sanctions from 7 to 10, or roughly that's where I'm told it is, does that have an impact on Putin's behavior? It doesn't seem to. The sanctions are leaky. Putin's got the Chinese, he's got the North Koreans, he's got the Turks to some extent. So I don't know what leverage he has. And I think that Trump is going to have to offer him a pretty cushy deal to get him.
Well, there's also the where of the Russian military. How much more might do they have? I mean, if Trump says, "Hey, look, you guys keep going at this, I will at some point, make this more difficult for you." They can't. There's only so much that the Russian military, both in terms of munitions and strength, can actually do. So I do question how long that whether Putin's not looking for an off ramp.
Look, I mean, I agree, but the history of Russia is they'll throw bodies at a problem basically until you cry uncle. And again, unless Trump is willing to say, I will rush, arms and sophisticated weapons, give them the green light to go into Russia. All the things that apparently Joe Biden didn't do sufficiently. Joe Biden tied their hands behind their back, right? The guy who wants peace, 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 peace. I'd be really fascinated to see him flip on a dime and go all in.
Yeah, I want to see if he can pull a rabbit out of the hat in the call today. We'll see. All right.
Well, by the way, that gets back to the schedule. There's no way this executive order time at 3:00 is a placeholder, but I can't imagine that he has a call. Caroline said it yesterday at the briefing, but I can't believe that Trump personally would want to go out there and talk about this.
He'll want to shape the narrative immediately.
Right.
Yep. Sean, you're saying you can't imagine he won't want to talk about it.
Correct.
All right. I love the double negative. It's sometimes the most effective way to communicate. Thank you for that. All right. Lots to talk about. Exactly. Lots to talk about, as there has been from even before the president took office, about whether he'll defy court orders. And he has said he won't. And I think there's a bit of a media double standard. There are plenty of times President Biden said he disagreed with the Supreme Court decision. Saying you disagree with the decision doesn't mean you're going to not obey it.
Well, also, he didn't follow it in the Supreme in the student loan case.
Yes, I understand. So now you have this Venezuelan, these gang deportations. You've got other cases where you've had provocative statements from administration people. You've got Steve Bannon saying he wants to impeach judges who don't rule the way he wants. On the plane flight, the administration says they will adhere to the judge's verbal order not to do any more of these flights to Latin America. They say they couldn't turn the plane back and that the judge's order didn't apply once the plane was out of U.S. airspace. So that one maybe is a little bit fuzzy. But Dan, what is the tripwire? What are the merits where they do something and they're defying an order because they say they didn't in this case. They say the language isn't defying an order. What is the tripwire for defying an order?
I think when it's in plain broad daylight, so to speak. So if a judge were to issue a ruling, let's say at 9 a.m. on a Monday, and Tuesday afternoon, it's just kind of clear as day that they did not follow the order, or they attempt to find some loophole in the language. I do think the public patience in that at that point becomes a little thin. The history of defying the courts in this country, when Democrats have tried it or talked about packing the courts or whatever, does not go over very well. But I think on the Venezuelan case, look, the politics are so in their favor. And I think the Trump people will never stop using the courts as a foil. They'll never stop trying to work the referees, to intimidate, to bully. It's just what they've done for 9 years, and they're not going to stop.
Sean?
Yeah, I think timing an issue. So Dan's right. I mean, it's got to be in this case. You know, I was even listening to an analyst, one of the legal analysts on CNN as I flipped around this morning, and they were saying, you know, it is ambiguous whether or not, you know, where the planes were and whether or not the verbal order carries. And so there was some ambiguity there. There's no question about it. No matter, I mean, there's no question that legal scholars are debating this. But Dan's right. The timing matters. If something happens on a Monday and they defy it on a Tuesday, but it also goes to the issue. Like right now, do you want to be the person basically saying that, you know, MS-13 and Tren de Agua criminals should be brought back to the United States? I mean, that to me, so the politics on that issue are 100% in their favor. If there's another issue where it's a U.S. citizen or something like that, I think you would lose people. But these guys are, I mean, they knew what they were doing. And I think that this is a much more strategic play than just, oh, you know, it wasn't like they thought of it after the fact. They were like, hey, where were the planes? They knew what they were doing.
And that's what enrages the Democrats, right? Which is, to Sean, they absolutely know what they're doing. The videos, like the politics are so in their favor, which drives Democrats nuts. I do think, though, like the Brown professor and other things, you get more instances, and we've talked about this for months, of regular, real people, like real Americans, you know, all their official documents, nothing wrong, getting swept up in one of these things. I do think at some point people say time out, like WTF. What if some granddad has a heart attack on the plane and dies because he has a panic attack that he's being deported, right? That's when I think that they will have a problem.
I think I will say this. We talked about this, contrasted it with the Biden administration. It's not just on the economic front, but on this front, between Tom Homan playing the tough guy and Marco Rubio has been absolutely brilliant in his communications. And, you know, you watched how he just destroyed Margaret Brennan this past weekend, where it's basically like they know the law, they know the circumstances, and they're running circles around it. The bottom line is, if you're in this country as a guest of ours and you violate the law, you know, it's almost like being in someone's house. You don't need to, you just say goodbye, get out.
Rubio does belligerent sarcasm. Belligerent, incredulous sarcasm on these issues so well. He's just like belligerent, sarcastic, incredulous. Amazing. And very strong communicating. All right. We'll keep watching that. The president was at the Kennedy Center yesterday, but we're not talking about yesterday because we're forward looking on this program. But I do think there's some important lessons to be learned. Much of the visit was in public. There were still photos, some really compelling ones, no matter what your point of view about Donald Trump. And he talked to the press there. But there's also an extraordinary Washington Post story based on a leak of an audio recording made of his private meeting with the board members. It's incredibly interesting listening to him talk about the operations of the Kennedy Center. So I believe Sean will have a lot of insight here. Dan will have less because he doesn't know Trump as well. I believe that if you know Trump well, or even sort of well, how he behaved at the Kennedy Center is no surprise at all. But it is kind of amazing that the President of the United States, busy as he is, spent like several hours over there. So, Sean, what can one learn about Donald Trump's priorities, his concerns, his attitude towards this term from all the time he spent there that will have meaning going forward?
Well, this goes back to what I said, you know, at the beginning of this administration. He has had 4 years to think about the people, the process, and the policies. And yesterday showed. So there's two things that I thought were important yesterday. Number one, on the writ large conservative issue, the idea that we have sort of ceded the cultural ground to the left and said, well, let them have their silly award shows. We just won't go. We won't, whatever. And I think after some time out, it was, wait, why are we doing this? Maybe we could take them over. Maybe we should be able to orchestrate some of this and not just cede the ground. And I thought that was brilliant. We shouldn't just let it happen and say, we just won't go to the parties. We won't do this. You guys do this. We have a right to participate as well. And then I think on a personal level, if you know,
can I just stop you on that one before you get to the first one? I think what you said is totally correct, but I'd say it's more than just participate in them. It's take them over and use the spoils of victory to say this building, less than a mile from the White House, it's ours. We're not going to just let the liberals run the place. We're going to take it over and run the place. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. So I think there's a movement issue, and then there's a personal issue. And the personal issue is that Donald Trump loves movies. He loves music. I mean, that's, I know everyone mocked like the playing DJ at Mar-a-Lago, but he really does know. It's not that he just enjoys them. He loves them. He loves talking about the characters in classic movies and the plots and so to him, he actually has a real personal interest in culture. And you heard him kind of opine about some of the people that he'd like to see there and some of the awards. So it's both movement and personal for him.
Yeah. One of the extraordinary things he said in that private meeting, I think it was in the private meeting, is that he's open to hosting the Kennedy Center honors. And again, as Sean said, he loves American culture. He loves popular culture. He loves 50s, 60s, 70s, the whole thing. And so he conceives of his life and the presidency like a big movie that he's the star of, or a big Broadway show that he's the star of. And now he's got this facility, even though they found mice and other rundown aspects of the Kennedy Center.
Welcome
This is like exactly. This is like an extraordinary soundstage, right? This is like a great set for him to go over there and do whatever he wants. And so I think people who don't understand why he spends so much time there don't really understand, as Sean Well described, his mindset towards this stuff is personally, it's like, I can bring in the greatest acts in the world. I can get in the Beast, drive down the street, see whoever I want, not a bunch of liberals, but a bunch of entertainers I love, and then go home. And that's like his own personal theater. Sorry, go ahead.
He actually was, I would say, dabbled in theater early in his career in terms of financing. And like, this is an issue that he cares deeply about. But one last point that I would make sort of tangential to this, the leak that we're referencing goes back to one of the things during the first term, the leak with that NSC calls that people would leak out. When people hear that he doesn't want anyone in the room, I understand that. Like, if you knew that every time you had a private conversation, some dirtball was leaking out the contents to it, you would do everything that you could to sort of minimize those opportunities and to have private conversations. And so I know sometimes they'll say, oh my God, he kicked the so-and-sos out of the room. Yeah, I would too. After every single call and event that guy does gets leaked by someone who, is personally opposed to him, if you can't trust the people around you, and in this case, obviously, it's not his team, it's someone obviously at the Kennedy Center or a holdover on the board. But this is why part of the way that he acts in other circumstances, because it's driven by the fact that you just can't trust any of these people.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing and turn it over to Dan. So I don't like it. I think it's a bad practice when people look at a leak and say, well, I know who did it because X. Like, you don't always know. But my sense is this was not leaked by someone who was in the room, but someone who had a recording device in the room. Because the Post story has a few things where they say, so someone says this, but we couldn't identify the voice. So we don't know who said it. If someone was in the room and recording, presumably they would know who said it, right? So I don't know if there's a secret taping system or what, but it seems like it wasn't a case, as you suggested, where Trump says, I don't want people in the room. I don't think there was anybody in that room who he didn't trust. I think somebody taped it remotely. It would be my guess. Dan, your thoughts on this?
I don't know Trump as well, but my instincts were exactly what you guys said, which is part of this is it's an iconic institution with a Kennedy name on it. So to take over the Kennedy Center, to go right at it, I think, really excites Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. And then, as you say, he's the greatest, TV political producer we've ever had. He loves pop culture. He loves, consuming tabloids and Page Six. Like, he used to call it proactively to get into it. And I think, whether it's DJing at Mar-a-Lago or putting on acts at the Kennedy Center, he loves this stuff. I mean, it's remarkable that a president of the United States spent that much time in the middle of trying to end multiple
if this was a
wars.
Democrat, you guys would be talking about how he's celebrating the arts. It's like, because
no, if it was a Democrat, you guys would be saying he or she is wasting their time, not, focused on the economy and inflation and ending the wars, but, to the victor goes the spoils.
Sean and I think, are having the exact same thought as are some people in the chat, which is before he leaves office, he's going to try to rename the building after himself.
By the way, Mark, Inspector Clouseau here. I think I figured out what actually happened, and I'm being serious.
Yeah.
I think that somebody in the room, recorded it and handed it to somebody outside, because the Secret Service would have swept the room. And they would have, most likely found a listening device or some kind of, to start it remotely would have been very difficult. You're risking, if I were somebody and said, I'm just going to leave my iPhone in there on record, that's a pretty risky situation. Whereas somebody walks in, has their phone, and then hands it to someone, plausible deniability.
Yeah, but I can't imagine they would have let an interloper in there. But as I said, I don't
not an interloper. I'm on the board.
Yeah, you record it.
I hand it to Dan.
But why would someone on the board give the audio to someone else?
Because then they can say, I didn't give it to the Washington Post.
Okay, but here's something that sometimes happens also, which is it's possible it was in a room where someone could tape it from outside the room. I don't.
Yeah, they may have security cameras and stuff that have audio capabilities.
We don't really know. We don't know. But anyway, well, let me ask you this, Sean. Do you think he came off well in the leaked audio or poorly?
I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I don't think there's anything shocking, which is why we're not. It's Trump.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Democrats. Chuck Schumer, we talked yesterday about how poor the timing was for him, that he's going on his book tour right when he's clashing with the left. He canceled the book tour, at least postponed it because of quote unquote security concerns. He also reportedly had meetings over the weekend with some of the leaders of the liberal groups, quote unquote groups, who did not allow him to bury the hatchet, or if they did, they allowed him to bury the hatchet in his own brain. So he's not doing too well in figuring out how to go forward. Now, as the party continues to search for a message in messengers, there's a bit of a dispute about what to do. This is Jonathan Capehart, Washington Post, 103. Jonathan Capehart is on the left end of the Democratic Party. Here are the people who he thinks are doing a great job leading the resistance: Bernie Sanders, Chris Murphy, AOC, the aforementioned Governor Pritzker, Governor Walz, and Congresswoman Crockett. Okay, I'd say those all are pretty far to the left. Chris Murphy maybe less than the others, but they're pretty far to the left. Here's what Bernie Sanders, the aforementioned Bernie Sanders, put on Twitter just in the last news cycle. Do we have that? Yeah, there we go. The Democratic Party needs a major transformation. No one disagrees with that in the party that I know. It can no longer be a top-down, billionaire-funded, consultant-driven party. Most people in the party I know agree with that, except maybe the billionaires and consultants I know. It must be multi-generational, multiracial, a multiracial working class party. Everyone agrees. In a time of growing oligarchy and authoritarianism, that's the only path to victory. Finally, contrast to people who think the left and the progressives are the ones who will lead back. Here is 104. This is a Politico story that says just the opposite. It says 104, please. It says centrist Democrats are having their moment. A string of special elections and some polling show the party might be getting pulled to the middle. Before I turn to Dan and Sean to talk about this, if you want to get a question or comment in, please raise your hand. Chances are I will not bite your head off today. In fact, I'll welcome you. Even if you insult two-way, even if you insult Table 17, I will listen politely. Dan, where are we with Schumer as a case study and the party overall now after 2 bad weeks?
So I think where Chuck Schumer is he needs to get a strategy, because what happened last week and what's happened since Trump got elected is Schumer has paralysis. He is not moving in any direction. We need the base. And we need moderates. That's how you put a coalition together to ultimately get victory. And the problem is that Chuck Schumer, like the vaunted history of Schumer, is that he understood Missouri and Ohio and Arizona and all these different states to find the right candidates, to find the right message and produce victory. And now he's sitting here and he looks at the base that is seething with white hot anger. They want to fight everything all the time. And he says to himself, I know that's not good politics. And he looks at the moderates and he says, and he's hearing, we fail the common sense test. Why can't we on 80-20 issues just say it or kind of enter the conversation with some ideas? Because the base doesn't want them to. And so, it reminds me of Saving Private Ryan in that opening scene on Omaha Beach, when they jump off the boat, everyone's getting blown up, and they find themselves ashore, and the guy says, Captain, what do we do? And he says, I don't know, but if we sit here, we're going to die. Schumer is just a sitting duck. So my advice to him is, you got to pick one or two fights, like put a strategy together, define your objectives, and go charge. Because he's sitting around telling both sides, I hear you and I'm with you. And the party's not moving.
Can I ask a question? Is Schumer a vindictive? I mean, Nancy Pelosi is one of the most vindictive politics that's ever existed. Is Schumer that way? Will he hold a grudge against a Hakeem or,
He will. He less than her. He will against reporters.
Right.
I think. So I hear. Not less than Pelosi against Democrats is my sense. Dan, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally. And they're different styles. Pelosi was ruthless behind the scenes with like subtle cuts. She'd cut you out of a committee, or she would make sure that you were kind of humiliated with a funding withdrawal. Schumer is much more like he just won't talk to you for a period, but then he'll be your best friend. Yeah, it's like Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Part of the problem he has now, again, I always go back to one of the two Haley Barbour quotes: "Good gets better, bad gets worse." It's when Chuck was seen as we've talked about here, Chuck was seen as the guy who understood both the base and the center, the guy who understood the rules of the game, the guy who could raise money, the guy who could convince donors the sky was whatever color he wanted them to think it was that day, and a guy who could, like Mitch McConnell, use the rules of the Senate and the media to get victories. And as you said, Dan, as we've talked about, it's not clear where his next victory comes from. And the frustrations amongst particularly the younger senators is pretty pronounced. Not, obviously not to mention the House, but the frustration amongst younger senators is pretty pronounced because he doesn't seem at this point to have the mojo he had for several decades when he was a very ambitious for the House. And
yeah, be back.
Anyway, guys.
All right.
Well, I mean, look, I think what Mark was saying was just, and the example everyone uses is Schumer still uses a flip phone. He doesn't have an iPhone.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going on this. Like, number one, it can't be, as Mark would like to say, call me out on, overstated on the fact that he canceled a book tour. Yeah. I've done 4 books. When you get, I'm sure you got in advance and whatever. I mean, like, publishers don't go through this process. You commit to, engagement with the media and events and things like that, because they're putting a lot of money on the line. The idea that Schumer canceled this speaks volumes to how bad the situation is. I said it yesterday that this was going to be a big moment for him because it was a tell how he handled this week. And sure enough, I don't know if he was watching the show or not, but he cancels the book tour. And I think that's a moment. The problem, Dan, is exactly what you're putting your finger on. This is a guy who doesn't get the current environment. Yep. And at some point, say what you will about Mitch McConnell, but he knew when to step back and say he's a brilliant tactician when it came to the Senate, but he knew enough about himself that he wasn't the hip and cool guy. He knew the Senate. He knew how to navigate it. Schumer, I think, still thinks he's hip and cool and has a handle on it, and he doesn't get the joke that he's out of touch.
Sean, I think it's a great point. McConnell was of the Ronald Reagan era. And to your point, he knew it's the Trump era now, and it was time to move on.
Right.
Schumer is of the Clinton era, the Obama era, and we're defining that next era. And I think, sadly, Schumer's not going to be a leader in that next era. And I think the biggest problem with canceling the book tour, what is the number one thing the base wants? Stand up and fight.
Right.
And what did he do?
Though, is that there was a tell. He knew that he couldn't handle it.
Right. He folded and is hiding from Democrats in Baltimore, New York, and Philadelphia. Forget going to win like North Carolina and, a Senate race in Georgia. So I think we'll see. I mean, I would be surprised if Schumer, gets dumped like in the next couple months. But I do think this
he
is
just
kind
doesn't
of
have the awareness. That's my point. He doesn't
right.
have the awareness to say, "Hey, it's my my time has passed. I want to pass the baton." Speaker Pelosi knew how to do that, even
Yep.
right,
Yep.
and she
No.
stayed in the Senate and passed it to Hakeem. I think that was the smart move. McConnell understood when his time was coming. I mean, maybe a little too late, but he did know that it wasn't that it was time to go. The last thing I'll say, and I think we could take some questions, is I think the juxtaposition between those two stories. The Democratic Party, you either do what Jonathan Capehart is doing, which is double down on stupid, which I fully endorse. All of those people on that thing, I would just love. I will literally donate money to any of the six. But the smart move is to get back where the people are. Over and over on this platform, leading up to the election, we heard people who said, "I'm a lifelong Democrat. I voted for Hillary. I voted for Obama. I voted for McGovern, whatever," and are now saying, "Look, I can't stay there anymore." And the party generally will start to move with them. These guys, it's like they're entrenched and they won't do it. And that's going to cost them dearly. Historically, you should be picking up seats in this midterm. They're killing themselves for that reason. So anyway, that's why I think that Mark was absolutely wrong on that. And anyway, so we'll just keep going.
I don't know exactly what happened. I got a weird Zoom error message. Apologize for that. Glad to be back. What did I miss? Anything we need to discuss?
We put a nice bow on it. We had some great one-liners. They'll be on social media in a few seconds. Don't worry about it.
Look forward to it. Welcome in, everybody. Again, as always, tell us where you are. What's on your mind? If you're new, tell us you're new. Sir, unmute. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, so first you're gonna help us with that.
Howell?
Hi, how are you? I'm in.
Yes,
sir.
we
You're
can
here.
hear you. It's great.
Welcome in. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
Oh, I'm in DC,
That's what I was going to guess.
All right.
Yeah, and that's the White House over there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. It's amazing that you choose me, but anyway, glad to you have me here. I'm Polish American, proud Polish American, born and raised in communist Poland. So you will have some Eastern European, Central European taste. And regarding program, Mark, Sean, I really appreciate you. You are just survivors. And then, if I ever would be a Democrat, I would vote for you. Okay. So,
thank you.
Great show. I think it's the best DC show. Anyway, I have a comment about Putin and Trump discussion. I totally agree with Dan. Putin will play Trump as I don't know how to say it even. He's a cult killer. He's a KGB guy. He's a thug. He will play Trump as a pawn, unfortunately, I would say. And unfortunately, Mr. President Trump, he doesn't have any leverage. Because why? Because Russia can fight this war at least 1 year. That's what our analysts. I'm working for the really nice Polish think tank. So our analysis, it says it's at least 1 year, probably more. He can basically fight like that. I give you one example. You have to understand, we Poles, we know Russians very well. First time the Russian troops stationed in Poland was 1706, so 70 years before United States was created. And they left us 1993. Anyway, so I give you one example. One operation during World War II, Berlin operation, the operation to capture Berlin just in the time to make this nice May 1st parade. And they failed because they captured May 2nd, but they lost like 500,000 people just to make it in a time for the parade. 500,000, it's almost like all casualties, all Americans killed during the World War II. So,
we all appreciate how well you understand history, both intellectually and emotionally. Do you have a question you want to ask or a final point you want to make?
That's my point. And a question for Dan, because I saw Jack Shapiro a couple days ago. He's fantastic. So why not him? Why not him?
Josh Shapiro.
Why?
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Josh Shapiro.
Yeah. Okay.
Why
Good.
people like John Fetterman?
Yeah.
You know, Democratic Party is so much to left that, I think without the people like Shapiro or Fetterman, you are lost, basically
Okay.
lost.
All right. Good question. They don't like each other, by the way, which is interesting. Dan, what's your thoughts these days on Fetterman and Shapiro?
Yeah, and I'll just add that today, on your first point, I think it's the 11th anniversary of the invasion of Crimea. So the symmetry of having this call today, I think, is not lost in Russia. Look, I think Josh Shapiro may end up being one of the people, or John Fetterman. They obviously couldn't be together. One, they don't like each other. Two, they're from the same state. But look, we need the energy and the passion of the base, just as Trump needs the energy and passion of the MAGA base. And we need to appeal to moderates. It's not an either or, it's both. Josh Shapiro has a history in Pennsylvania, winning almost 60% of the vote, of doing just that. So the question will be, can he find a way to sufficiently bring the base on board? That's probably going to be his biggest challenge, and it's what kept him, frankly, probably from being Kamala Harris's vice president. I know Mark says he probably wouldn't have accepted it, but let's say he would have. I think that was her concern with parts of the base. And anyone coming out of the base, like the people we referenced earlier, those 6 folks, have to find a way to appeal to the middle. So we'll see, but I'm a big Josh Shapiro fan as well.
Sean, where are you on Shapiro these days?
I think, he's attractive and he's probably going to get a good look. Just keep in mind, he did not exactly have a tough go round his first gubernatorial race. It was not the strongest Republican that we could have put forward. So, we'll see what his political skills are when he's really tested more in a primary than anything else. But I definitely would put him at the top of the heap for a Democratic primary.
Yeah, I continue to believe that his performance when he was under consideration for running mate was very cautionary, and since then he's accumulated more controversies in Pennsylvania, and he and his team continue to handle it like amateurs. They continue to not understand that you can't let the Inquirer and the other local press just slam you without some substantive play or some press strategy, and they don't seem to have it. And I just don't think he can succeed as a national candidate if you don't have that capacity. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for the question, your kind words about two-way. And I can just tell from your eyes you love Table 17, even though you didn't explicitly mention it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, Dave Garcia, come on in. Tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind, please.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Calling in from sunny Morristown, New Jersey, home of the American Revolution. Thanks for calling on me. Appreciate the platform. You guys do the Lord's work here. Should note I'm a Democrat. Don't hold it against me when I ask these questions. So I think just the Democrats are in a really challenging position. Something I've been thinking about since the election is, for my entire adult life, liberals have defined the center of the country as socially liberal, fiscally conservative, kind of like New York Republican. I think conservatives would define the middle as socially conservative, fiscally liberal. And I think we have a different kind of electorate now. So, Sean and Dan, I'd love to get your take on this. My take is that the country is socially libertarian and fiscally self-interested, where it's, I don't care what you do, but don't tell me what to do. And what do I get for my tax dollars? It's kind of like the broad base, like sentiment and vibe that I see. So would love to just get your take there.
Sean.
I think it's brilliant. And you should write a paper on that because bookmark it before somebody else does. I think it's a great point. And especially among younger Americans, we're seeing that a lot more, which is, I don't want you to tell me what to do, and I want to know the value I'm getting. I'm paying money. And that's why I think, there are issues with the process of Doge, but not the effort of Doge, which is, why am I paying money for something that I'm not getting anything from, or that's inefficient or wasteful, et cetera? And equally, like, stop telling me how to live my life. So I think you're putting your finger right on it.
Dan.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the problems for the Democratic Party is that the coalitions, there's a reorientation going on. And right now, we're more the party of the kind of white collar urban services class versus the blue collar working class. And to your point, the kind of lines are being blurred and changed. And I think you said it very well. And it's part of the reason Chuck Schumer is struggling. It's just not what he's of and what he's from. So it's a great point, and whoever can crack the code, and so far it's Donald Trump, probably be in the majority for a while.
Dave, I'll add my voice to my colleague saying brilliantly phrased and really well conceptualized. And I'll just say, and I've said this before, and I'm not the only one making the point. We had decades of the left doing so many things that people on the right and the center and some Democrats felt infringed on their individual liberty. That is, as much as anything, accounts for the pass that MAGA and Donald Trump get on other issues, because they just want a big correction on personal liberty, and they're affronted by the left saying we're the party of personal liberty, because that's not how they experienced life for a couple decades. And I think that's driven us. That's at least part of the explanation of what's driven us to where you say we are. Dave, again, take a bow. I don't know if you want to take a literal bow, but thank you for that, and we hope you'll come back regularly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Verna, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Great
Thank you.
morning. I'm
Thank
actually
you
from
for coming.
Iowa. I'm in Des Moines.
Very nice.
I grew up in Detroit, moved to Iowa about 40 years ago, followed my husband out here.
Does that make you a newbie?
Yeah, right. Honestly, what do they say? You can take the girl out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the girl. So definitely still hold on to some of those big city feelings and stuff. So hey, love the show, you guys. I work while I should be working while I listen to you guys and watch you guys. But I've wanted to kind of jump in just to kind of, especially today when you were talking about the Kennedy Center and Trump being there. I didn't actually see the visit, but my big thing about culture, I don't know, I'm sure you all remember, oh my gosh, Breitbart.
Andrew?
Yeah. What did you say?
Andrew, it's downstream of Pop.
Andrew Breitbart. Years ago, I'm a pretty devout, I'm a person of faith, but I was very impressed with him, of course, years ago when he kind of came on the scene in more of the secular conservatism and started talking about how we've lost the culture war. And I was very interested in that because, I just think I think it's great what Trump is doing, I guess. I was never a huge Trump fan. I voted for him, but he's kind of like, you can take him literally. I mean, don't take him literally, but you take him seriously, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just was going to make a comment about that in general, about the culture wars and that kind of thing, and what you guys thought about how conservatives do need to get involved. And we do like, culture. We like plays and operas and music, and I don't like to be kind of put in that box that we're conservatives and we don't like that kind of stuff. So I'm glad he did that.
So Verna, the funny thing is I totally agree with you. I appreciate you expressing your sentiments here, because when I pay $50 or whatever to go see a concert, I don't really care what their politics are, to be honest with you. And if I had to guess, 90% of them are probably not on my side. But I want to hear their music, or I want to watch a play. I don't need their virtue signaling from the stage. And it's just too often, I think that's the problem, right? Which is they want to go and use that venue to preach to you. And it's like,
right.
I'm not seeing you because I care about your politics, or I actually want to know them, or I look at you as somebody who, I think matters in this. You are a good performer. You're a good singer. You're a good dancer. You're a good actor. I don't really care. And yet, so to see Trump fight back is something that's very welcome. And the thing that I always find fascinating on our side is that we're not fighting to do the same. Like, I would equally say, I don't want to go watch, some performance and have somebody preach about, the First Amendment or pro-life things. I can go do that any time of the week I want to.
Right.
But we're actually just trying to get our people, like people who are conservatives don't get the ability to perform at a lot of places. They get canceled. They aren't allowed to perform, just randomly. And if you start to hear some of the things that, Hollywood alone is a whole issue about the blacklisting that goes on among people of faith, just not allowing them to perform. And then you get into musicians and the opportunities that they don't get because of some of the positions that they've held. All we're doing is actually trying to fight for an opportunity to get our side to perform, not to virtue signal the way they are. And that's the difference and why I think so many people are excited about President Trump. Yeah.
And I think that is a big reason. Overall, I don't know if you remember Pence when he went to see Hamilton, his family, they were like chastised before the show or after. And then JD Vance and his wife went the other day. They booed. Democrats are not going to win, especially in the age of information and the videos that come immediately out from all of these things. They are not going to win another election if they continue to berate, conservatives.
Well, we have a good example of this, which is Colorado used to be a very red state, and it's primarily libertarian. And my former boss, Jared Polis, it is now a solidly blue state thanks to the work of Jared and 3 other people. And the code that they were able to crack was when the religious right down in Colorado Springs began to become too powerful in Colorado. The Republican Party was seen as preachy. You had to follow, their social codes, or they were trying to force it on people. And Democrats ran as libertarians. We're going to stay out of your bedroom. We're going to, you want to smoke marijuana in the mountains out west, that's fine. We're going to focus on a good economy, an efficient government, good schools, kind of like the bread and butter basic things, but leave people alone. And the Republicans have never been able to recover in Colorado because the Democrats have boxed them out on that front. And to some extent on the national level in Virginia, I know we've had Republican governors, but Mark Warner and co kind of did the same thing 20 years ago. And except for kind of middle of the road Republicans, they've struggled to win statewide races there. So I think it is a good lesson for the Democratic Party.
Don't say that. That's like a really good idea for them. So it's true. It is absolutely true. And, being part of sort of the religious right for a long time, and though I never was really a judgy person, we had Democrat friends and friends who smoked pot and were gay for many years, but I don't think that that's how Jesus looks at people. So I never kind of fell into that sort of judgy, but it's true. The religious people do that. And so don't give them any ideas, the Democrats, on how to run next time. But you're right. We're not far from Colorado. We're far, but we're kind of out this way. We've been several times. We've followed Colorado politics. And yes, I remember when it was red, and I know what you're talking about. So very interesting things. You guys are awesome. Thank you. I could go on. I could just kind of be, it could be,
that's right. Keep going.
It could be a 4-way. I love the conversation every day. I was going to actually mention one more thing. I did write it down. I guess I sent it. Somebody mentioned how we were just saying it. Just one more thing about how that Democrats or Democrat, the gentleman that was before me talked about libertarian or feelings or that kind of thing. I just don't think that the Democrats will ever win unless they give up the trans stuff. I don't know what you think about that, Dan. He said I think you might have said actually they need their base. Yep. Which is that, when anti-Semitism and trans people, and I could probably go on, but I don't know if they'll win if they do lean into that at all. They need to get rid of that part of their base. They need to become a different party or independents or something, because I just don't think that that's what the American people want, whether they're liberal or conservative.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Dan.
Yeah, just I'll take a little bit of a nuanced view on that. I don't think the party should turn its back on trans people. I think to the point about being a libertarian, if that's who you as an adult want to be in the privacy of your, fine. I think where we got in trouble was when we went down into adolescence and began to kind of box parents out and kind of say, if the kid wants to do this, we're going to provide all of these protections and make all of these societal changes, sports being a part of this, locker rooms. And what was not had is a conversation with parents, because I know with teenagers, like they think one thing one day and the next day it's completely the 180 degrees, and that's normal and it's part of puberty and maturing. And so I don't think we should turn our back on trans people, but I think we have to recognize the spectrum of development and kind of where we say, hey, you go do you, and where it's appropriate for parents to have a say in their child's development.
Absolutely. And I really meant the people on the base, the politicians.
Yeah.
I think there's a way to include and be inclusive and love and embrace and help and assist in all of those kind of ways without making that a platform of your party. So the politicians. So yeah. Thanks,
Verna,
guys.
thank you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome in, Aaron. Thank you for joining. Tell folks that don't know where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Hi, yes, I am in Texas. Watch the show all the time, usually not live, but my kids are out on spring break right now, so I could actually turn it on at
Nice.
the time.
Thank you for watching and for joining. How old are your kids?
I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, 2 boys.
What do they like to do, those boys?
They like to wrestle. That is what they like to do.
With their parents or with each other?
Sometimes, but mostly with each other. Yeah.
All right, that's good. That'll last for years, and you don't have to, it doesn't cost a thing.
Yeah, that's what
Aaron,
my
again,
Trips to the ER don't cost nothing.
Yeah.
delighted to have you in, Aaron. That's right. Don't let them sprain or break anything. What's on your mind?
So I have a question about the Department of Education, the downsizing that's currently happening there and potential just shuttering of it generally, partly because I have young kids and I'm about to make a decision about where to send my son to kindergarten next year. My question is, what's going to happen to those dollars that flow through the Department of Education to districts and schools? So the Title I dollars, the Title III dollars, are those going to go away? Are those pots of money going to get smaller? Being in Texas, our state legislators are, pretty regularly talking about school funding, and we might have vouchers after this session. There's a lot of talk about what the per student funding is going to look like here at our state. And I'm curious what these changes at the federal level mean for students and teachers in the classroom too.
Fantastic question. Professor Spicer.
Everything that I'm aware of is that they're going to take the funds, ship them to the states, and remove the bureaucracy. So this should be a win for local municipalities and school districts and states.
Okay.
Dan?
I think we don't know that, because one of the things they're talking about is not just getting rid of the bureaucracy, but cutting dollars to achieve savings. And there's been everything from like 8 to 10% put out there. So we don't know. Is that just headcount and paper clips and real estate that is going away? Or is that part of the money that we spend on services? And I think this is where there has been no explanation of what the new kind of iteration of service is going to be, right? All we're hearing about is the cuts. At some point, you need to step forward and say, here's how we envision this working. Here's, are we going to put any strings on it when we send it to the states or not? And so I think to be determined, but I think you have a right to kind of have some questions.
Yeah. Aaron, do you live in Austin or somewhere else?
I live in Fort Worth.
Fort Worth. So I think I do too. The greatest slogan in the history of politics, not for a candidate, but for a ballot measure, was in Austin when they wanted to build light rail. And the people who oppose using the tax monies for light rail said, costs too much, does too little. And I think that's what's happened with our education spending, not just at the federal level, but at the state level too. We spend too much on educating, given the results we get. So I think I more agree with Dan than Sean that I don't think we know yet exactly how this is going to go. But for me, people shouldn't be looking to Washington to fix education. It's a state and local issue. That's the tradition in this country. It's very little of the spending on education does come from Washington. And of all the things in the government that are underperforming, education's top. Our performance is the worst and has the greatest impact on our society. So for parents, you got to demand that your local system does better. It's got to get more bang for the buck. Kids in public schools need to be better educated, given how much we're spending on it. But I just don't think Washington is ever going to be the answer. So I understand your concern because part of what's going to fund your kids' education if they go to public school is federal money. But that federal money has not solved the problem, right? It's not worked. It's not been part of a solution, and I don't think it ever will be. And certainly, Sean may be right or Dan may be right. It's going to be less, maybe not in terms of some of the money, but there's going to be less spending on education. Pat Buchanan used to call the people who worked at the Department of Education bureaucrats in sandals and beads. I'm not sure that's 100% right, but I don't think we've improved education very much in this country, if at all, at K through 12, as the Department of Education has grown. So I get why people hear education cuts and they get worried, but I just tell all parents, focus on state and local. Your governor and your local officials, they should be the ones you're on the top of to say, why are we spending so much? And I pick this fight all the time, particularly after COVID. If you think that teachers unions are part of the solution, explain how. Okay, explain how, because it doesn't appear to many Americans that they're part of it.
Aaron, do me a favor, call Councilman Michael Crane, tell him
Yes.
and get some answers from
Yep.
Councilman Crane.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. I have a follow-up question just related to the platform. So I'm an independent. I voted all over the board. I have friends on both sides of pretty much every issue. Me and my husband have been able to get a lot of our more conservative friends to watch two-way. We have had zero luck getting any of our liberal friends to watch this platform. I don't know. Do you have
But did they tell you? Are they just busy? Are they out protesting Tesla dealerships? Like what is it they don't have time, or they don't like to hear what's going on?
I don't. I mean, my guess would be they're still shocked and beaten down by the last election.
It's not the platform. It's just that they're
or they don't want to hear. They want to stick with their news sources that just reinforce their.
I think there's three things, and you've said two of them. They're shocked and they want to break. Two is to the extent they don't want to break, they just want to be in the church of Maddow. And three is they have the perception that this platform is more favorable to conservatives than anybody else. It's just not true, or to MAGA than anybody else. It's just not true. We try to convince people that all the time. I'm trying to figure out a way, and Dan and I've talked about this. We want to get as many liberal voices on here as possible. We want to grow our audience for economic reasons, because as Michael Jordan said, Republicans buy sneakers too, and Democrats, we want that audience to grow, but they have to believe that this is a welcoming place, and I hope we can convince them of that. But also they have to want to be engaged. And I will say there's plenty of nastiness on the right. There's plenty of negativity, but my perception is there's an asymmetry now, which is if you say something that a liberal doesn't like, you're dead to them. You're dead to them. And so they don't want to be involved with anybody who's not just the Church of Maddow, because they don't want to be associated with anybody who is the least bit open to saying something nice about Donald Trump. We got to change that. So keep inviting them.
On behalf of Mark, if you can get 5 people from the left to join the platform, he will send you a brand new car.
Well,
okay. All
maybe
right,
I'll send your boy some really nice Hot Wheels from Italy. Not actual car, but in all seriousness, tell them to come in great numbers. Like I have this recurring dream that one day there's like 10,000 liberals on here, and they just swarm the platform. They take it over, and then we can say to the MAGA folks, "Come on back, because you're being outgunned." But I appreciate you. We all appreciate you inviting them, and we hope you'll continue to invite them, and we hope you'll be more convincing than you've been so far.
All right.
Trust me, we're making calls trying to get people to come on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for joining, Aaron, and thanks for being part of the platform. We really appreciate it, and good luck getting those boys well.
My dream is that I win Powerball.
Yeah. Well, we have different dreams. Thank you,
Yeah,
Aaron.
just saying.
All right, guys. Tomorrow, I suspect we'll be discussing Putin, maybe, or maybe more about the Kennedy Center because it's my new passion. Talking about the Donald John Trump Center for the Performing Arts. I just see the bust now. The Kennedy one comes down like it's in Eastern Europe after the Cold War ended. They just Steve Bannon comes in with a giant rope and pulls the Kennedy bust down, and then they raise the Trump bust to massive MAGA cheering. That's how I see the movie. That scene in the movie. Gentlemen, closing remarks? Or are you done for the day?
I think that's a good place to end.
All right. I'll see you at 6 o'clock Eastern time tonight. Former Democratic Congressman from Ohio, Tim Ryan. Always a delightful guest. If you're not familiar,
with them, former rep from the Ohio, ran for the Senate, ran a very good race, but came up short as a Democrat in that state. And he's usually a pretty good quote. So I'm sure he will
He's
be
on a hoodie tour these days. I keep seeing him trying to play up the Fetterman view. So
I was going to say he was kind of John Fetterman before John Fetterman. So he's a little bit of a junior junior Fetterman.
We'll see. We'll check his attire. We'll check his attire.
So Sean, who do you have coming up tonight?
FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. I have so much to ask him about what they're doing with the networks and the media. There's a whole push for YouTube to go after YouTube TV.
Yep.
According to the FCC, I'm going to ask them why, because they say they're discriminating against faith-based opportunity, channels. So I'm gonna ask them that. I mean, there's literally, you talk about Section 230 and big tech. It's going to be fun. So
well, two-way tonight has never slowed down, but Sean, you are on a roll with these with these guests. So good luck tonight. Thank you all for tuning in.
By the way, good job on Laura last night, Dan. That was it's nice seeing you. I've got a quad box just like the two-way folks. Like I can see it also. Everyone who thinks we put that quad channel up, but I always love seeing your face. It's either my face doing a Car Shield ad or you on a Fox show. So that's nice.
Well, thank you. It's always wonderful to be invited, and it's always a great opportunity. So thank you guys for watching. We will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Enjoy your Tuesday.
Bye.